continue looking at the life of Joseph, learning from this story of Joseph and gleaning the things that God would speak to us about how he worked through the life of this young man. And we understand when we read the New Testament that everything that happened in the Old Testament was for our instruction, was for our education, everything. So we can't just carve off the Old Testament and throw it away and say, well, we've got a new thing now. We don't need to read any of that. Because the Old Testament sets us up for the new. The Old Testament is the heart of God preparing us for the life of Jesus. And that is certainly evident as we look through the story of this young man, Joseph. The story of Joseph just sets us up perfectly for the coming of Christ. And so let's recall some of our stories so far. Joseph was the 10th out of, or he was the 11th out of 12 brothers, 10 big brothers. And he was the son that had been awaited a long time. They had been looking for it for a long time because that was his dad that had 4 wives. This was the one he really wanted, the one that he really loved. It was Rachel. And he ended up being tricked and ended up working 14 years for the pleasure of having Rachel as his wife, because that's the girl that he loved. But in the meantime, his status was increasing as he added extra wives and extra sheep and sons, and he was becoming a very wealthy man. And God was blessing him in so many different ways. And then when God finally gave him a son through his beloved wife, that son became his favorite son. And so the wife that he loved led to the son that he loved more than the others, and it developed some disunity in the family. It developed some problems within the family. And no matter what you say for everything, for the different family dynamics that go on and some of the different issues that come along with kids, the kid is not to blame for any of that. And so all of those other children, they were born to that family. They should not have been treated in the way that they were, because God gave them something special, every single one of them. And God gave Joseph something special, absolutely. And so when we read in the New Testament that there's no favoritism with God, God gives every one of us something special. God has gifted you in a way that he's not gifted me. He's gifted me in a way that he's not gifted you. And every one of us has a part to play, a role to perform, and a gift to use for God's glory. So we're looking at the life of Joseph, and he was gifted in a way that other people certainly weren't. And this can be a little confusing to us until we read in the New Testament about this list of spiritual gifts, and we get to the one that says there's a gift of administration. A gift of administration. Now that one is certainly not as flashy, certainly not as commonly talked about. But when you read the life of Joseph, you've got to admit, this guy had it. This guy knew how to get things done, how to administer things in a godly fashion, because God was with him. So, this unity in his family, his brothers sold him down the river, and he landed in Potiphar's house as a slave. So, we have that episode of the life of Joseph, where brothers sold him down into slavery. But we see that God was still with him. And then we see this episode while he is in the employment of Potiphar, of the guard, the captain of the guard there, and one of the chief officers for Pharaoh, and how God blessed him in such a way that he was in charge of all of the Potiphar's house. Everything that went on in the house, Joseph was running stuff. He had that gift of administration. And the Bible says that he was so good at it that the boss, the guy that owned the house, didn't have to care about a single thing. People didn't come to Potiphar and say, hey, look, we're out of groceries. Hey, Potiphar, the grass needs cutting. Hey, Potiphar, so-and-so didn't deliver the whatever. They didn't say any of that to him. All that Potiphar had to do was sit down at the table and eat dinner, because Joseph took care of everything else. This was the man that God gifted with that administration. But his wife, she was a different story. She was not satisfied with just having a perfectly run household. She wanted a little something on the side. And so that ended up with Potiphar having to send Joseph to prison. Had to choose between his wife and his slave, and looking at that perfectly run house, probably made that a tough decision for him. Especially you think this wife was probably following a normal pattern for. She'd probably done this thing before, but as it turns out, he gets sent to prison. Well, in prison, Joseph still does the same thing he'd been doing, didn't he? He was running everything so smoothly that the jail keepers, the wardens, the guards, they didn't have to do anything. Joseph, would you take care of making sure all the other prisoners are present and accounted for? Would you mind just watching the dinner truck come by and see if everybody gets food? Would you mind locking everybody up? Here, take the keys and make sure everybody's in their place and locked up. Everybody there? And they didn't have to do anything except go play cards in the break room. And Joseph was taking care of everything. He took care of Potiphar's house. He took care of the prison while he was in prison. You had a couple of dudes in there. The baker and the butler got thrown into prison. And while they were in the prison, they each had a dream. And when they were upset about their dreams, they came up to Joseph and said, we've had these dreams and we just don't know what they mean. We know they mean something. They're just too weird to pop out of nowhere. We know there's something that these dreams mean. Not all dreams mean something. Okay? We have dreams every night. Probably don't mean anything. You can have all kinds of mixture of daily activities and things you're worried about and thinking about, whatever. But there are times where God speaks through dreams. God can speak to you while you're asleep. God can speak. He can pop his revelation right into your brain, and then you wake up thinking, I know God's trying to tell me something. That's what happened to these two guys. God's trying to tell them something. Well, the butler's dream was about 3 days, he was going to be back employed by the Pharaoh. He was going to be able to put grapes into a cup and get that wine, put that wine back into Pharaoh's hands. So his dream was, you're going to get your job back. Pharaoh got his trust back in you. So the baker thinks, well, that's a good dream. Let me give you mine. I was dreaming about this basket of bread on my head and the birds were eating it. He says, man, I'm sorry. That dream means you're going to lose your head. Pharaoh is not going to trust you. You're going to be executed. And he was. Both of those dreams came true. And Joseph had one thing to say, is you guys are heading out there. I know you're going back to work. You're going to be called back up to the big house, up to Pharaoh's palace. Remember good old Joseph. Remember me. You're heading back up to the big house. Life is pretty. Think about me when you're up there, because I don't really deserve to be down here in this prison. I was mistreated by my brothers. I didn't deserve this at all. Didn't do anything wrong, and here I am suffering away in this prison. Just think about me. Put in a good word for me when you get up there. So that's where our story was left. And then we get to chapter 41. In chapter 41, 2 years later, Pharaoh had a dream. We don't know all this stuff that's going on in these 2 years, but Joseph is just plugging away. These are menial times. Sometimes that God speaks to us, said, I just want you to keep going, keep doing what you're doing. You're on the right track. You just stay in here. You stay in my word. You stay in prayer. You stay working at this task that I've given to you, because God wants you to just move along and keep along. And here it was 2 years later, before it seemed like anything else happened. 2 years later, Pharaoh had a dream. And Pharaoh's dreams were kind of on the wild side. There's no telling what he had for dinner that evening. May have sparked some weird stuff coming out. And so here's his dreams. He has one dream where cows are in it. So he dreams about cows. The first dream is there's 7 beautiful cows that come out of the river. Big, fat, gorgeous looking cows. And then 7 skinny cows come out. 7 like bones sticking out of the side. And ribs are showing on these gaunt cows. And the weird thing happens is that the skinny cows come along and eat the fat cows. And I guess they're still skinny. So they eat the 7 skinny cows eat up the fat cows. And he's just, man, this is a crazy dream. And he's also got that feeling. God's trying to tell me something. There's something different about this dream than other dreams. You can't just say, well, it was all that pizza that I ate, and I shouldn't have had all that sausage so close to bed. Well, sometimes you can just throw away a dream like this, and that doesn't mean anything. But this dream meant something, and he knew it meant something. So he goes back to bed. Well, there's another dream. Here comes another dream, and this time the dream is about corn or grain. And went back to sleep, he had another dream. There's stalk, and it's got 7 beautiful ears of corn, perhaps, or grain. And one stalk had 7 plump, ripe heads of grain. And then 7 of the terrible looking ones, they come along. 7 heads of grain, thin and scorched by the east wind, sprouted up. The thin heads of grain swallowed up the plump ripe ones. Now, this is even weirder because grain doesn't eat other grain. When you think of cows eating something, cows don't usually eat cows, but at least they're animals that eat stuff. But this is grain that eats other grain. Now that's just really, really odd. And he's got this in his head again. This means something. This is a troubling dream. And when he wakes up, it was only a dream. But he can't shake that feeling that this is something special. This dream means something. Well, so he does. He's troubled, and he calls in all the wise men, all the magicians, and all the wise men that come in, and the Pharaoh told him his dreams, and nobody could interpret it. He calls all the best psychotherapists in the country, everybody that's supposed to know anything, and they say, Pharaoh, that's just a weird dream. We have no clue what you're talking about. They probably suggested the pizza. It was just a pizza. It was just you getting too close to bed. You shouldn't have watched the late show that night or something. And they were probably trying to pass off some silly ideas like that. But he knew, no, there's something about this. There's some kind of interpretation that needs to happen. And when he said that interpretation, then the butler goes, oh yeah! I remember this guy. When I was down in prison, you remember when you had me down in prison? There was a guy there that interpreted the dream for me. And the dream was that I would get my job back. And then I'd get to come back up here to the palace. And sure enough, here I am. He was right. What was that guy's name? Oh, it was Joseph. there was a Hebrew down there, and he interpreted this dream for me. And so Pharaoh said, well, get him up here. Bring him up. So Pharaoh sent for Joseph. They quickly brought him from the dungeon. And of course, been in the dungeon a while, not presentable. They didn't get a new set of new clothes. Probably didn't have the orange jumpsuit that they pass out these days. Probably just rags. So they clean shaved him, cut his hair, and shaved, and gave him some new clothes and brought him into the Pharaoh. And so Pharaoh's now talking to him. Now I'm looking down to verse 15. I've had a dream, and no one can interpret it. But I've heard that it was said about you that you can hear a dream and interpret it. You know what this is? That is an opportunity for Joseph. Joseph thinks, now I can get out of this prison. Now I've got an edge. There's something that I can do that I can get myself out of prison. Now I'm finally, there's a little light at the end of the tunnel, and I have got a little leverage to improve my situation, and I don't have to go back to that prison. Let me see what I can get done here. Now we got an opportunity. That's what most people would be thinking right here, but not Joseph. No. You know what Joseph did? Joseph did for the Pharaoh exactly what he did for the butler and the baker, which is he took a regular old conversation and opening to any normal conversations going on, and he just took that conversation straight to God. He turned that conversation to a conversation about God. Look at verse 16. I am not able to. Sorry, Pharaoh. I can't do it. I can't do any of this. But it is God. God who will give Pharaoh a favorable answer. Not me, but God. See, some people would have looked at this as an opportunity to speak up for themselves, to say something about themselves. Look what I can do. As if it was a job interview. It's almost like a job interview here. Let me see your CV there, Joseph. What you got? Let me see pop your resume down on the desk here. And Joseph, no, it's not me. Can't talk to you about how good I am. I can't talk to you about how great an administrator I am. Just ask the warden, just ask Potiphar. They'll know how good I am at arranging things and taking care of it. He didn't get to present any of this stuff to the Pharaoh. What he did is say, I've got a great God who can handle this. I've got a great God who can interpret this dream. I've got a great God who is able to give you a favorable answer. So Pharaoh said, okay. Well, here it goes then. He tells him his dream about the seven good cows and then the 7 skinny cows. And then the 7 good ears of grain, and then the 7 ugly grains. And Joseph said, well, what you got here, Pharaoh, is you got 2 dreams with 1 interpretation. God is telling you something. This is a special dream. This is not just the pizza. It's not just the late show. This is God speaking to you, and he's fixing to tell you what he's going to do. Verse 28 says, this is God telling you what he's going to do. You're going to have 7 years of abundance, and then 7 years of famine. And everything about the abundance is going to be forgotten. The famine will devastate the land, and the abundance will not be remembered because the famine is going to be so severe. Since this dream was given twice to Pharaoh, it means that there's no way out. This is determined by God. It's a fixed deal. This is going to happen. And then he puts in a little word. So this is what you ought to do. Pharaoh, you ought to look for a man that's discerning and wise and put him in charge of something. Administer this so that you can take 1/5 of the harvest during those good years of abundance and then gather them all up and keep it and store it up for the times of famine that are coming. This needs to be somebody that you can trust and somebody that can take care of the whole country like this and build this food reserve so that the country will not be wiped out. This is a good plan. Say what else you can think of about Pharaoh, but he recognized a good plan when he heard it. He recognized the hand of God upon this young man when he saw it. So, it says what you really need is to hire somebody and build in this whole system so that you can save up and save the country. And Joseph, right there, gave him that wise counsel. And Pharaoh said, you know what, I think I found the man. I think I've got my eye right on the man of God that can save us from all of this. Pharaoh knew he was looking at something special. He knew that dream wasn't a regular old dream. He knew it was something from God. And when Joseph starts talking, he realizes, I know that this is the man, God, for this job. And so, he exalted him. Things are starting to turn around now for Joseph. This proposal pleased Pharaoh, verse 37 said. And he said, can we find anybody that can do better than this? All of those magicians and wise men that came in here, you know what? You guys are fired. You're done. Go find something else to do because I've got the wise man here. This is the man of God. He realized that this is God talking. And he put in, God has made known to you, there's no one as intelligent and wise as you are. You're going to be over my house, and all my people will obey your commands. Only with regard to the throne will I be greater than you. I'm putting you over the entire land of Egypt. He took a signet ring off of his own hand and gave it to Joseph, and he put a gold chain around his neck, had him ride in a second chariot, and had everybody call out everybody, Awake! Look out, here it comes, behold. And he said, no one is going to raise their hand or foot in the whole land except you give them permission. What's going on here? Pharaoh never had it so good. Never had Pharaoh had it so good. He didn't have to do anything to administer that kingdom. Joseph was going to take care of it all. Potiphar never had it so good. The wardens never had it so good. And now Pharaoh never had it so good. The best thing he ever did was let a man of God run stuff. This is the gift of administration in full force. God has just blessed this young man with the ability to take care of business. And it's an amazing thing when you use the gift that God has given you in the power of God for the purpose that God has set before you. It's just going to blossom like this. You're not saying to God, God, this is what I want to do for you, so bless what I'm going to do for you. I've already got this plan worked out, God, so you just come along and rubber stamp it, and then we'll be good, and I'll tell you what we're going to do. Joseph wasn't going around telling God what to do. Joseph wasn't going around saying, God, this is the gift that I want. Give me this gift, and I will do this. So Joseph just had that gift of administration, and it was working out for God's glory at every turn. You let God give you the gift. You turn around and use it for God's glory, and then whatever he does will prosper. And God is prospering him like this. Well, we look at this story, and we see that everything was working out like this. Joseph was 30 years old, verse 46 says, when he entered the service of Pharaoh, and he left and traveled all the way through the land of Egypt, and they had 7 years, outstanding harvest, gathering all the excess food together. He administered this. He stored it up in such abundance. 2 sons were born. He got a wife out of the deal, and 2 sons came along, and all this time, the 7 years of abundance came to an end, and 7 years of famine began. Just like Joseph had said, famine in every country and extreme hunger came out through the land of Egypt. But Pharaoh said, all right, here's what we do. Just go to Joseph. He'll take care of it. You go to Joseph and take care of it. That's what Pharaoh told everybody. That's my standard. Can you imagine? This is the White House press conference coming out, and all that's said is, go talk to Joseph. That's all he needed. So Pharaoh comes out, everybody needs to hear, all right, go talk to Joseph. Joseph's going to take care of everything. The famine had spread across the whole country. Joseph opened the storehouses, sold grain. The famine was severe, but not only Egypt, but the other nations came to buy grain. He was severe in every land. It's amazing to me when we can study our world and realize that all of this stuff is absolutely true and it really did happen. It's just fascinating to me. I don't really need anything except God telling me His Word to believe it. I believe it already, but I still think it's cool when I see some other news reports and stuff, and you study the world and you think, yeah, that's exactly the way the Bible says it is. What they did is they went to Mount Kilimanjaro in Africa, and they were drilling in the ice pack in Mount Kilimanjaro and going all the way down and pulling up a core of the frozen ice pack that's been there always, because it never melts on that top of the mountain. They pull up this giant ice and they study the ice so they can see the effects of climate change. And they pull up this giant tube of ice that's drilled all the way down from the middle of Mount Kilimanjaro, and they come across these layers. They can see layers in ice just like you can in the Grand Canyon. See all these layers and see the different developments that happen. And they get to a layer that they realize is, a couple of thousand years before Christ. Way in the BC area, and they see a layer of dirt stuck into that ice. Because way back then, everything was so dry from this east wind that dust covered the entire continent. The entire continent, all the way to the top of Mount Kilimanjaro, was this dust layer. So that famine, this east wind that was talked about right there, it's a real thing. It really did happen, and the entire world was starving. And God used this man and his plan that He had promoted through Pharaoh to save the world. When you read about Joseph, we read this great story, and you think, this is an example. I need to be like Joseph. Oh, there's a lot we can learn from Joseph. Learn how to be thrifty, how to save up for the future. You can learn about working hard, being diligent. 7 years being patient, working all those years in the prison. You can work patience and diligence. You can also learn how to avoid temptation. See, he was not tempted. And he avoided temptation in Potiphar's house. He avoided the temptation the first temptation was to worry about that impurity. Here he's avoiding the temptation to use his power to build himself up. He was building God up. But the main point of this story is right there at the end. Every nation came to Joseph in Egypt to buy grain because the famine was very severe. The main point of this story is that God used one man to save the whole world. And what I told you about Joseph and about studying his story, it sets us up for Jesus. It sets us up for the whole idea that God's going to use one man to save the whole world. And when we put our trust in Jesus, that one man's sacrifice is enough to cover all the sins of the entire world. We put our trust in Jesus and let Him take care of us. So God's going to come out and say, we got problems. I know you all got problems. You come to God, God's going to say, go see Jesus. Let's pray. Heavenly Father, we're grateful to you for loving us. We're grateful to you for providing for our needs even before we know that we need them, that you have already prepared, that you've already got your salvation stored up, waiting for us to need it, to come asking. Lord, we're so grateful that Jesus is there to provide what we need. And through that one man, that you're going to be able to save the entire world. And that you can save everyone who comes to you, lays down their life at your feet, and say, Lord, we need you. Every hour I need you. In your name we pray. Amen.
Thank you.